I get the unfortunate pleasure of following a couple really good topics, really good presenters, and even from this morning. So I want to talk a little bit today. We attend these conferences, and we started doing this a couple of years ago, our organization. And the one thing that we noticed is there's a lot of talk about plastic, cardboard, paper, but there's not a lot of talk about textiles and clothing. And in today's world, the clothing and textile market is huge, and your turnover of those products is just as big. And the amount of product that's being discarded into landfills and things like that it's a large number. So we're going to talk a little bit about recycling clothing and textiles helps to preserve the natural resources of our earth. I click around here so I can see this one? The green one. All right. There we go. So a little overview. The environmental impact of textile and clothing recycling. There's a huge environmental impact, and we'll talk a little bit about that. One of the things is water, and we all know that water is one of the most precious commodity that we have on the planet. The textile and fashion industry uses a tremendous amount of water from everything that's made. We're also talking about economic impact, but I think the biggest thing is the environmental impact, and that's really what we're going to focus on here. Also, the other thing too, we're talking about circular economies, and that was brought up quite a bit today. In the fashion world, there's really not a circular economy. When you go to the store, you buy something, and then when you're done with it, you discard it. We want to prevent that in the future. We want to cut that down. We want you to take those items that you purchase and reuse them or recycle them in some way, shape, or form. You look at other green economies and cultures in the fashion and textile industrial companies. Till about 10 years ago, there really wasn't a lot of companies who thought about this. It's kind of the last thing that people have talked about in terms of recycling and reusing products. And I think that's it's an important key to note that in the last 10 years, you've seen a lot of companies start to rethink that. And I think somebody brought up earlier today about the European countries, and we're separated by 4,000 miles of ocean, but they've been doing a lot of this stuff for many, many years, a lot longer than we have. And I think there's something to learn from them with recycling of fashions and textiles in the future. And of course, one of the things too is changing the consumer's behavior toward recycling and reuse. That's a huge issue. It used to be, and I'm probably as guilty as anybody, you buy clothes, you wear them, when you're done with them, you just throw them away. That philosophy is changing now. You see more and more people. We do trade shows, we do PTA conferences, we go to different organizations and speak, and there's been a big change in the mindset, especially in the last couple of years. We've seen a lot of turnover of older, quote unquote, people, and now a more younger group of individuals are starting to run the PTAs and some of these other organizations. And I think that's important too. They have a little bit different attitude. It's kind of interesting to see that come about over the last 2 years. Actually 3 years, I guess it's been. This is 2024. So they change over to a little bit different group. They're talking more and more about, hey, what happens to my stuff? If I donate it or if I direct items, for sustainability. And they want to know. Before nobody really cared, and I think they want to know because they want to know that it's not going into landfills, and that somebody else is having an opportunity to use those. Another thing is the college students. You know, I have a 21-year-old stepdaughter, and her friends, every weekend they go thrifting. They're huge thrifters. They're not quite influencers. I can't wait for that so I can reap the benefits of that, but they're working on that. But they drive. She goes to school at Ohio University, which is in Athens, Ohio, and they'll drive to Columbus. They'll drive to Cincinnati. They'll drive to Cleveland. They'll go and go thrifting on the weekend, and it's interesting. 80% of her clothes, she thinks, she told us this a couple of weeks ago, 80% of the clothes that she has in her closet are from thrift stores. And her friends are the same way. So it's an interesting dynamic of the younger generation are really getting into thrifting and recycling and reusing, and I think they're the ones that are going to drive this forward over the next 50 to 60 years. I think somebody else mentioned too earlier that, you know, for recycling, for plastics, and that you're talking a 50 to 60 year changeover. And I think it's going to be a little quicker than that with fashions and textiles, but it's the same process. It's a new generation thinking the way, you know, hey, I want to recycle this, I want to get this out, I want to, I want to be green initiatives, and I want to be environmentally conscious. So there's a greater amount of research currently on textile recycling over the reuse of textiles. There's been some changes now in the last few years if you look at the ideas and the way people are thinking. It always used to be, you know, oh, we're just going to recycle it. Well, that has an impact on the environment as well. And now the more reuse of products, people are getting into that. You know, the hand-me-downs, whatever you want to call them, passing on to other people in need, versus taking that same item and tossing it in the garbage. So 90%, this is a pretty good stat, this is almost 90% of textiles end up in landfills today. So 9 out of every 10 people in this room, your textiles will end up in a landfill. That's today's fact. The fashion industry, you know, we all wear clothes, but they are the second leading producer of pollution in the world. They also are one of the top users, I should say, of water, of overusers of water and contaminating water. Most of it's in third world countries. So we talk about sustainability from a standpoint of water usage. You know, it really comes down to life itself. I mean, we all need water to survive. And I think we take for granted sometimes that in these other countries who produce all these goods for us, that, you know, hey, they're fine, you know, it's their country. But I think it's up to all of us to help that. One of the things is the fashion industry didn't realize it was the second leading producer of pollution until a few years ago. And a lot of that is fast fashion. What I mean by that is anything that's, I call it the fad fashion. You know, it could be a hat, could be a, you know, was it the Stanley Cups all of a sudden were the greatest thing since sliced bread. That really does play it, fast fashion. These are fashion companies are turning things over quickly. They're producing more and more and more. As there's more people in the world, there's more, you know, no more need for fashions. So the energy consumption too in the apparel industry is continuing to climb, you know, because of the fast fashions. So that's something that, you know, turning that from a fast fashion and circular economy into a textile reuse, you know, using the textiles and fashions over and over, getting the full life out of that fashion is something that I think is very important across the world. And like I said, people over in Europe, they're used to this, so it's just something we need to build on here in our country. Economic impact highlight here is, will landfills be able to support future fashions, textile in them? I mean, we talked about the one, had a slide up about Florida. 50 years from now, how much red space was on there versus the extra space for landfills and stuff. So again, this just the fashion industry and the textiles are just part of the overall recycling picture. And of course, then you have to have the government's buy-in. I mean, not only do people have to buy into it, but so do the people who represent us and in charge of governments and things. They have to have the same ability to buy in to these programs, especially across the world, just not necessarily here. So the average American discards 70 pounds of clothing and textiles annually. So each one of us in here will, on average, will discard 70 pounds to landfills. So that's a lot when you think about it. Also, a pair of jeans from start to finish, and this includes the cotton crop itself. The cotton plant is the most, I can't think of the word now, but it's the number one plant for agriculture that uses water in our country. So you imagine that, imagine the amount of cotton that's produced annually. It's the thirstiest plant that there is. And it takes about 2,000 gallons of water to produce one pair of jeans from start to finish. So imagine, it's just mind-boggling numbers if you think about it. So the clothing and textile industry recycling, they generate 7 to 10 more jobs at landfills, that landfills and waste to energy plants. So, it sounds like a broken record, but it's something that I'm pretty passionate about. Recycling 1 ton of textiles and clothing saves the equivalent energy usage of a 2-person house for a year. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but if you multiply that by, 200-300 million people, and 200-300 million tons, you're talking a lot of savings. The biggest thing we talk about is behaviors. Again, it's college kids are more into this than even myself and some of the older people. It's just the way it is. I think we grew up differently. Money grew on trees. And so I think, nowadays the younger generation has taken the mantle on that and moving it forward, which is what is needed in order to sustain, this type of industry going forward. And again, the fashion industry and the use of sustainable retailing in disposable fashions, fast fashion, and secondhand fashions. There was one thing in here I was going to get as all the men in the room in trouble. Might be up here later. The average woman has 7 pairs of jeans. If my wife was here, she'd stop me before I finished it. But you only wear 4. So, yeah. My wife would just look at me and, but it's true. I mean, and she knows it. When she does the laundry all the time, I'm like, you don't even wear half these clothes, One little trick that you can try, and this was from a long time ago, and it kind of holds true. Go into your closet, and everything you have in your closet, turn the hangers around. However which way you normally have it, turn them around. And when you wear a piece of clothing, take it out, and when you put it back in your closet, turn it the way that you normally would have it. And you can do this like every 3 or 4 months. And after 3 or 4 months, just look at the amount of clothing that you haven't worn. It's stunning. The first time I did that, this was 15 years ago when I got into this industry. 2/3 of my closet I didn't wear. I see people shaking their heads. Yeah, it's true. I mean, you know, we buy stuff on whims and we go, oh, I need that shirt. Oh, I'm going to wear that 50 times, and you may wear it once. My wife has a friend who, I didn't tell you this if it ever comes back to haunt me. She'll buy something she knows she has to wear once, and she keeps the tags on it, and then she takes it back. At least it's getting resold again. The other thing too is demand and market, and the biggest thing we've talked about, education. I mean, it's just educating people. We do that. We go to PTA conferences. We speak at organizations. Just a simple education of why do you reuse clothes, why to recycle clothes. There's organizations, we're one of them. You know, we collect quality used clothing. We sell to thrift stores. We sell to other organizations. We also have an export business that, you know, we send stuff overseas for sale in those markets. And then we have, and part of our export is we have rags that we rag out, and we'll send those different shredders, and those will be used for, you know, car foam for insulation, shop rags, different types of things, towels. So even if you have something that's, you know, a couple people today have asked over at the booth, you know, what do? I have things that are torn. I have things that are, you know, I don't want to throw them away, but what else do I do with them? And that's really where it comes down to, you know, what we decide as a society of what to do with those. So, you know, they can be recycled. Anything that's cotton can be recycled. So you have there's some things that can't, unfortunately. Not everything can be broken down and processed into new materials. So those are types of things that we hope to get, we hope to get them back as good used products so we can sell them across in thrift stores and other markets. So textile and clothing recycling plays an even more important part in the challenge of climate change. I mean, we all talked about it. Everybody here probably, you know, you hear about it. Storms are bigger, climate change, warmer weather, stuff like colder weather, bigger swings in the thing, and this all plays into it. The fashion industry plays a very significant part in that. Reducing carbon emissions from the fashion industry, there's been a huge reduction in that in the last 5 years. And then just the need to reduce the flow of textiles and clothing to the landfills is a crucial step moving forward. And I think I have some. You know, pricing. That's the other thing. You know, you go to a store, you buy something brand new. Let's say you go to Kohl's and it's $20, and you wear it a few times. 4 or 5 months later, you send it off to be reused to a thrift store. It might go out on the shelf in a thrift store for $10 or $9 or $8.99, $7.99, what have you. It just gives somebody else the opportunity to buy that clothing that you wore previously. You paid $20 for it, and now it's being sold for $7 or $8. And it's the same thing with the export business across the world. Those items are sold at pennies on the dollar. And I always laugh because you see people all the time in different countries wearing Nike t-shirts and, you know, Florida Gators stuff, Ohio State stuff, Oklahoma stuff, and you wonder how they get that. Well, that's how they get it. The export stuff is exported across to their countries. And then they have markets set up, and they're able to buy those products at pennies on the dollar. So it's, you know, it's a kind of a step down approach, but you know, that item started at $20 at Kohl's, and it may sell for $2 or 2 cents in Guatemala. This company I work for, United Clothing Donation Services, we collected last year about 55 million pounds of textiles. That's our little part of it. Other organizations collect a lot more, but we're a small organization. We're in the Southeast. We're in 7 states in the Southeast: Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. Actually, more than 7 states now. 9, right? 9? Yeah. Georgia, Tennessee, Arkansas, Texas, and we're in the bigger cities and stuff. So, and our motto is never buy new again. That's one of the things that hits home a lot. Like I said, I think younger generation is much more in tune to this than even we are. And so he talked about, how does the textile clothing recycling help preserve the Earth's natural resources? It's a huge part of our world. We talk about water, we talk about sustainability from a farming standpoint, the water that's needed for crops, and all those types of things. And the more we reuse textiles and clothing, the more we recycle them, the less that needs to be produced. The less, you're creating more environmentally friendly circumstances. And the other thing, a lot of the companies in today's fashion industry are now starting their own recycling program where they're doing a buyback program where they'll try to, you can go to them and say, I have, 10 things, and they'll buy that stuff back from you. So that's a new trend that's starting. Because they see it now too, that in order for survival of even their industry, they have to start reducing the amount of the environmental, their environment that they use. So, 90%, we talked about that, of all textiles are discarded in landfills. And then the fashion industry is ranks the second most in pollution. So, those are a couple things that are key points. And then, the overall reduction of textiles and clothing in landfills will significantly reduce the stress on natural resources. We talked about water and sustainability. And here's some fun facts. These are kind of neat. We talked about the 70%, or the 70% of the world's population uses secondhand clothes. Actually, that figure is closer to 80% now. So it's not necessarily here, but it's across the world. And textiles and shoes make up 12% of all landfills. It's a big number. And then, that should be, 2 million tons of textiles are recycled each year. That should actually be higher than that. And then 13 million tons of clothing end up in landfills each year. So there's a big disparity in what is recycled and what ends up in the landfills. So that's, And then it also takes 715 gallons. If you take out the watering of the cotton plant, it's 715 gallons to make a shirt of water, to make a shirt and a single pair of jeans, but it takes 0 to reuse those items. So you can see that the cotton plant uses a lot of water, and we have a lot of stuff that's cotton. People like 100% cotton material. It feels good. I have a bunch of stuff. We all do, but it's a thirsty plant. And then in the U.S., the number one trash producer, we are the number one trash producing country in the world. I think our recycling partners know that. So again, this is, we make up 5% of the world's population, but we generate 40% of the world's waste. So just some numbers, little fun facts. That we have more of them. There's all kinds of them you can find out, but these are some of the good ones. And that's it. Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Just back up there. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bryan. And just think about it. Within a week or two, somewhere in the world, somebody will be wearing a T-shirt saying, San Francisco 49ers Super Bowl champions. Because they made them advance for either team winning, and the others have got to go somewhere.